Chapter Chapter 10, number 2. One who serves Hashem out of love. Osik b'Torah u'b'mitzvos. He engages in Torah study and mitzvos and commandments. V'holech b'nesivos ha'chochma. And he walks the pathways of wisdom. Lo b'nei dov sheba'olam. Not for any other reason. Lo b'nei yira. Not because he's afraid of something negative or bad is going to happen to him. Lo kadei lira shatova. And not that he should be the beneficiary of anything good. That's not the incentive or the impetus to do it. Ela osa emes is very important. But he does the truth. Mishu emes. Because it's truth. V'sofa tova love b'glolo. The reason why I speak truth, because I speak truth. It's like a person does something for the sake of principle. What's for the sake of principle? No ulterior motive. If it's the right thing, I want to do it. I used to say there's certain quality characteristics that people possess, which is a confirmation that he's a quality person. What is this? You go to a person and say, this person needs help. For whatever financial help. So a person would say, do you know the person? I said, yes. Have you verified he needs help? Yes. He says, well, if he needs help, I would like to help him. Another person would say, do you know the man? She'd say, no, but I verified that he needs help. She says, if you don't know him, what are you getting involved? I mean, life's not complicated enough. If you have what to gain, it makes sense. But if don't have what to gain, what are you complicating your life? Two people. One is intelligent as the other. The other person says, if it's the right thing to do because he's truly in need, I want to be there. I want to be a participant. The other person says, unless there's what to be gained, why complicate your life? What's the difference? One person is in the truth column. If it's the right thing, I want to do the right thing. If it's the wrong thing, I don't want to do the wrong thing. The other person says, has nothing right or wrong. It's the I and the me. Am I going to be a beneficiary of this? If I'm a beneficiary, I'm in. Not, I'm out of here. That's the difference between these two people. A person who serves for love, he studies the Torah for the sake of the Torah. He does the mitzvahs for the sake of the mitzvahs, not because of fear, not because of gain at any level. It's purely because it's the truth. And because it's the truth, he wants to walk the path of truth. Ultimately, is he going to be rewarded? Yes, but that has nothing to do with the impetus or the incentive to do the right thing. I want to do the right thing because it's the right thing. That's the concept. I pointed out yesterday, in the second paragraph of the Shema, what do we say? If you listen and heed my mitzvos, and you serve me with all your heart and all your soul, I will give you the rains in that time, you'll have bounty, and you bring in your harvest, and so on and so forth. That's the second paragraph. But what does it say? But you have to be very careful. You may be seduced by your heart, and what would you do? And you're going to serve alien gods. That's the second paragraph. Now, the second paragraph we mentioned yesterday, it doesn't mention you're going to serve God with all your assets. Okay, so Shimi Yochai says the second paragraph is speaking about the person is not doing the will of God relative to what he could be doing. What do you mean? It says, and if you heed my word, my commandments, with all your heart and with all your souls. But it doesn't say with all your assets. You're not willing to forego your pleasures of life for the sake of God. What does that mean? That means I'm in here up to a point. Meaning, if it meets my standard, I'm here. If it doesn't meet my standard, I'm out of here. So I'm willing to give you, to put my full effort in it and invest fully my life and that, but to give up the amenities of life, that I'm not willing to give up. So if that person, there is a little bit of a hook here. I'm here because I'm a beneficiary. So what about if the person is seduced by inclination, saying, go serve alien gods? And you're convinced that's in your best interest. You know what you do? You're out the door. Because over here, there is a hitch. The hitch is that you're here because. And therefore, Reb Shimon Choy says the second paragraph, as much as you're doing with all your heart and with all your soul, but you're doing it because you're a beneficiary of what's being done. So if you see yourself in another context being a beneficiary and you can be convinced, then you're going another direction. The first paragraph, we speak about love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your material. You're willing to give everything up for God. What does that mean? It's not me, it's him. When it's not me, it's him, you can't be seduced. Because there's no number that you could buy me. You can't buy me. The second paragraph, you could be bought. For the right price, you could be bought. Automatically, that means that the evil inclination could hoodwink you and seduce you and convince you that doing something else is in your better interest. The first paragraph, it's not possible. Because you're willing to give it all away for God. That means you have no conflict of interest. You have no ulterior motive other than doing the truth. That's exactly what he's saying over here. That's serving God out of love. You're doing for the sake of truth for no other reason. So of truth, I'm willing to give it all away. In one location, a person gets involved and he travels, leaves his family, spends an enormous amount of money. Of course, there's a 30% chance you can make a profit on something. Although you realize 70% chance, it's totally a waste of time. But for a 30% chance or 50% chance, you're willing to take the chance. 50%, talk about a 70% chance. Definitely you're willing to take it. 70% upside, 30% downside. You're going for it. You're going to leave your family. You're going to invest, put a tremendous amount of money up front, covering costs, everything. Even though there's a 30% chance you're not going to make it, it's going to be a loss. It's going to be a total blowout. When you serve Hashem, 100% return, without a question. And we're talking to a believing Jew. The person believes. But yet, when you're told you have a 70% chance of succeeding and being profitable and becoming a wealthy man, you say, no, with that percentage of chance of positive, I'm there. But the believing Jew, if it's a question of studying Torah, doing a mitzvah, which is 100% return, more than 100% return. There, it's not so simple. Why? You know why? Very simple. A person who serves God selflessly at every level, it's not even the question. He's serving God. If I'm serving God because I'm a beneficiary, so what happens if I'm craving the material and I want the material? I want that 70% upside because I want to become that wealthy man. I want that acknowledgement. I want all that. But also, of course, I want to do a mitzvah. I want to be in good standing with God. But you're pitting something which is abstract versus reality. Reality is being acknowledged, honored, and being stroked. That's reality. You're putting reality versus something which is abstract, relatively speaking. That's the case. Push comes to shove, where do you go? You go after the material, you don't go after the spiritual. But if you're a person where selflessly you're committed, if that's the case, you're not being drawn, you're not being pulled in that in either direction. Give me two. But I just explained you, when you're dealing with abstract versus the reality, you want comfort, you want security, you want acknowledgement. That's a reality in people's lives. We all have egos. And when the ego is not addressed, we're we feel denied. In real time, we feel denied. Even if you don't have an inflated ego. Pleasure. You want to be left alone. You don't want to be put upon. That's reality. The other is, there's always a tremendous amount of cost factor to invest in the spiritual. Now, so as I said, when you pit reality versus abstract, relatively speaking, spirituality is abstract compared to the reality of life. Very often, the reality wins out. But why, if a person's in a foxhole and the bombs are falling, at that moment, we say there's no atheists in the foxhole. You'll make every level of commitment in that foxhole. You know why? Because your reality at this moment is either you live or die. And at that moment, you come to the reality that unless God's on your side, it's irrelevant what you have, who you know, what you know, it's irrelevant at that moment. So what becomes your reality when you're in that foxhole? Your reality is God. When you're out of the foxhole, your reality is not God. You believe in God, but it's not your reality. I can take initiatives. I know people. I have means. I could protect myself. And when you're in that foxhole, all that means nothing. It's reduced to nil. At that moment, all that matters is God on your side, is not God not on your side. At that moment, God becomes your reality. So you're not pitting anything against anything. Therefore, you're willing to make any level of commitment to give it all away to be able to save your life at that moment. Because at that moment, the only one who makes the determination whether you live or die is God himself. One time, a person didn't work on Saturday. He had no livelihood. He had no job. And there were Jews who were Sabbath observers. They'd work a whole week. Comes Friday, the employer says to the employee, "Are you coming in Saturday, tomorrow?" If he said no, he says, "Then don't come back. I'll pay you what I owe you. Don't come back." This person has a wife. He has children. Then he has to put bread on the table. He has to cover the rent. And there's no other way that he could deal with this other than working. So it's tough to see your children being denied, being deprived. As a father, as a human being. So what? But God says you can't violate the Shabbos. Can't do it. You're not permitted unless it's life-threatening. So you're going to come and become very creative and say, maybe this is this is that. You go speak to the rabbi says, there's no way you could violate the Shabbos to go to work on Shabbos. You're not permitted to do it. There's certain people, what they did was they would work 3/4 a day. They go to early Sabbath services, early Saturday morning, and they come back for lunch and go back to work again. That's what they do. So they had the best of both worlds. They didn't leave their position, and yet in their minds, they were doing their best to observe the Shabbos. But others said, the boss said, no, you got to be here. You can't leave. You come in at 8, you leave at 9 o'clock at night. You're going to work a 13-day a day. That's it. Otherwise, you have no job. It's not easy. Why? When I say reality is, as a human being, we have emotions, we have senses, we have feelings, and all that. That's real. Belief is real, but it's not as real to the degree it could be. If you advance to a certain level, I believe, and I'm willing to sacrifice for that belief up to a point. Even beyond that point, but you don't know when that breaking point is. But in the physical sense, you have to deal with your reality because that's the real thing. It's emotion, it's pain, it's senses, it's everything else. So let's talk about you're willing to give your life. And I said this. It's easy to die in a moment than to live a life of sacrifice. Rameir Simcha Vince says, a Jew was told either bow to the idol or we take your life. You commit murder or we kill you. Person says, God says you're not permitted to commit murder to save your life. You can't take a life to save your own life. You're not permitted. So they go and they take your life in that one moment. You understand? The moment your life's taken, it's over. You've succeeded, you don't have to deal with it beyond that point. What about if they say, if you don't do this, we're going to torture you for the next 6 years? That's what we're going to do to you. We're going to torture you. That's not simple. And ultimately, after torture you, then we're going to take your life. That's a tough one. Because to be able to endure pain and pushing that boulder up that mountain for an unlimited amount of time, not knowing, you have to be literally a living angel to be able to survive that, to be able to deal with that. That's why a person says, I'm willing to serve you with all my heart, even give my life. But to give up the amenities of life, the security, the comforts, which are contradictory to my emotion, it's not so simple I'm willing to give that up. Because when push comes to shove, I'm not sure if I can handle it. So therefore, the price is for the highest bidder. So if the evil inclination goes and shows you that he's the highest bidder, he takes over your life. That's the point I'm making. A person who does the mitzvahs and studies Torah, not for any ulterior motive, not because he's afraid of punishment, he's not interested in reward. It's purely because for the sake of truth. He wants to walk the path of truth. Although he knows he's going to be rewarded, but that's not the incentive, that's not the impetus. Now, we spoke about a person who lives for the sake of principle, right? That's what we're talking about, sake of principle. And people, they do crazy things for the sake of principle. Why do you live for the sake of principle? Because you believe that principle is correct. How do you know it's correct? How do you know? Because I believe it's correct, but you realize that's ego. Right? People turn the world over 20 times for the sake of principle, but how do you know your principle is correct? You know why? Because that's what I believe. Once that's your belief, that's your ego. When a Jew observes the Torah, because it's the path of truth, how do we know? It's not me. How do we know the sun is shining? Because you see it shining. That's reality. A Jew understands the Torah is truth because God said it's the truth. So if God said it's the truth, it has nothing with me, it has nothing with ego. It's to the contrary.
Yeah.
I'm negated to the will of God. Therefore, that person, what he does, what's the driving force? If it's truthful, I want to be there. It's not truth, I don't want to be there, regardless of what there's to gain or what there's to lose. It's irrelevant to me. We had said that when Bilam had given the final solution to Paro, to enslave the Jewish people, what did Yisro do? He fled in protest. You know what it means too? This is an affront to the king of Egypt. King of Egypt is the most advanced civilization. He has a problem and he buys into it and you disagree. And you turn your back on him and you leave. That takes quite a bit of gumption. How do you do such a thing? Such a disrespect. You know what the answer is? Because Yisro, for the sake of truth, he's willing to give it all up. Because it's such a miscarriage of justice, taking innocent people and enslave them. Because you're paranoid. Unacceptable. Okay, any comments? Because I want to stop in as soon as any comments or questions are mentioned, then we're going to stop. Shmuel, any other comments?
I'm good, thank you, Rabbi.
Larry,
You're still recording, Rabbi.
I know.
Okay.
Larry's still meditating.
That's all right, Rabbi. You know, except the only comment I make is that I keep reflecting on the idea that you use